So the 26th Amendment was passed, and the 26th Amendment basically says that no state can fix its voting age above 18. But it doesn't say that they can't fix it below 18. Maybe, I'm frankly of the opinion that if 16-year-olds were allowed to vote, that, particularly given the fact that since the late 19th century, when the average age of puberty was 16, now it's 12, that IQ scores have grown by 17 points over that same period of time, that 16-year-olds are allowed to drive in 48 states, that they are now tried as adults for serious crimes. Supreme Court has ruled on this. Juveniles in prison have grown 47% in terms of prison population since 1990. People under 18. That if 16-year-olds could vote, that they'd be more inclined to get involved in politics. And there's actually a movement to make this happen. Now, on the other side, Craig Shirley on the line with us, with Shirley and Bannister Public Relations. Craig is the president and CEO of Shirley and Bannister, and the author of Reagan's Revolution, a quite thorough biography of Ronald Reagan. CraigShirley.com, the website. Craig, welcome to the program.
Tom, how are you? Been a long time.
Yeah, it has been, and it's nice to have you back. I see nothing but an upside to this, other than the fact that I'm guessing that 16 and 17-year-olds are going to be really upset about things like we're polluting their air, we're destroying their, we're poisoning their water. Well, here's a quote from 14-year-old Rebecca Tilson in testimony before the Minnesota House subcommittee that was investigating the possibility of lowering the voting age in Minnesota. She said, quote, if 16-year-olds are old enough to drink the water polluted by the industries you regulate, if 16-year-olds are old enough to breathe the air ruined by garbage burners that you build, if 16-year-olds are old enough to walk on the streets made unsafe by terrible drug and crime policies, if 16-year-olds are old enough to live in poverty in the richest country in the world, if 16-year-olds are old enough to get sick in a country with the worst public health care programs in the world, and if 16-year-olds are old enough to attend school districts that you underfund, then 16-year-olds are old enough to play a part in making them better, end quote. What's wrong with that?
I think this, where do I start? That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
Why?
Because by her sophistry, that means a 6-month-old baby can vote also, because they breathe the same air, drink the same water. Why stop at 16?
Well, are you suggesting that we should no longer allow 16-year-olds to drive?
Isn't it ageism for a 16-year-old to argue that a 14-year-old can't vote, or for a 14-year-old to argue that a 12-year-old can't vote? This is stupid.
Are you suggesting, Craig Shirley, that 16-year-olds don't have the cognitive ability to be able to
I have
vote?
4 children. I know that 16-year-olds don't have the cognitive ability.
Then why do we?
I've got sons in their 20s who don't have the cognitive ability.
Then why? Well, I'm sorry to hear for that, Craig.
Actually, to be seriously, there are new medical studies that do you have children, right?
I have 3. They're all adults now.
Okay. All right. But when they did really dumb things in their late teens or early 20s, you scratch your head and you say, what the hell did you do that for?
Well, or just,
there's a new scientific
looking back at my own
study
life,
out that says that their brains are not fully developed until they're in their early 20s anyway.
I know. And I don't disagree with that. But why, if we are not going to allow 16-year-olds to make decisions about this democracy, and we're not going to allow them to make these, and 17-year-olds for that matter, at 17 you can be put in the army and you can go off and kill people.
We had this
but you can't vote on.
We had this argument back in 1969, 1970, 1971, and then Richard.
And it led to the 26th
Nixon.
Amendment.
Hey, exactly. And Nixon signed into law. And guess what? Nobody 18 years of age bothered to go vote.
No, it's not true. The 18 to 21 cohort was really significant in helping get President Obama elected. And I think that that's the concern on your side, is that if 16-year-olds are allowed to vote, then they're going to be more liberal than they are going to be conservative.
In 1980, Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter split the under 30 vote. They each got 48%, even though everybody thought that John Anderson was going to be the beneficiary of the youth vote. In 1984, Reagan, the oldest man in American history running for re-election, gets 65.5% of the under 30 vote. So there's nothing.
Well, then if you're confident that 16-year-olds are going to vote conservatively,
there's nothing to fear. As far as, in fact, I can make the case that a libertarian conservative philosophy is far more compelling, because Obama's message is like Carter's, says you have no future. You have a future of scarcity and limitation and sacrifice.
We're
going to ration.
Obama
Medicare.
is saying the exact opposite of that.
Is that your future is one of scarcity? There will be no oil. There will be no energy. Nothing.
No, he's
whereas optimistic
Come on,
conservatism.
Craig. You don't
Optimistic
believe that if you know
conservatism
it.
is all about the future.
Talking about, hey, let's get into something other than oil and coal and you know, these big old fossil fuel industries that are paying think tanks and
Okay,
come on,
right,
we get that. But
then,
here's a simple question for you, Craig. A simple question.
Tell the 18-year-old that you can drive with gasoline, but they can't. You go ahead and try to sell that.
Craig, one simple question. This is, I think, the big picture. If 16-year-olds are sufficiently cognitively developed, if they're smart enough and competent enough, that we're going to let them operate a 6,000-pound machine that's capable of mass murder, then why don't we allow them to vote?
If you're suggesting IQ tests, I'd rather.
I am not suggesting it's IQ tests. I'm saying if we let people drive at 16, we should let people vote at 16.
How do you know they have the cognitive ability unless you test them? How do you know? Now, I will tell you.
Well, actually, you know, it suddenly occurred to me we do have driver's tests.
I know 16-year-olds that I would trust with my life, and I know 40-year-olds I wouldn't trust to give me a stick of gum.
Okay, so do I. But that should not, you know, one of the core principles of the United States is that we allow everybody to vote. That's one of the reasons why I think we got Ronald Reagan as president. You know, the fact, you know, the old P.T. Barnum-isms, and you know, nobody ever failed to get rich underestimating the intelligence of the American public. Blah blah.
Voting to the quote intelligent people. Is that what you're arguing?
No, it's absolutely not. I'm arguing the opposite, and that's what I'm hearing you say is that you want to intelligence test people. You said you've got adult kids who are not smart enough to vote.
On the contrary, I think, but why limit it? As I said before, why limit it to 16?
Well, I would suggest that we allow 16-year-olds to vote, and that we allow 16-year-olds to join the Army if they want.
I would say, taking this a more serious direction, that somebody who puts on a uniform should be exempt. If they're in the military and they're willing to take a bullet for their country, they should be able to vote in their country.
So you're saying that let's lower the voting age to 17?
And I would lower the drinking age, too, for people in uniform.
Yeah. Why just people in uniform?
Because they're making a much bigger sacrifice than either you or I or
you think a 17-year-old who has graduated from high school and gone to work for a police force who's literally willing to take a bullet every day, particularly in many of the cities in America, who works as a fireman isn't
opening up a Pandora's box. I think there's something.
You think that a 17-year-old who takes a job as a machinist isn't working for their country?
There's no greater service and love of your country than putting on a military uniform.
I don't buy it.
Well,
I think it's a fine and honorable thing. I have a lot of respect for the military tradition, but I'm not going to make a fetish out of it. I think that there are many patriotic Americans.
We don't even pay them very well. I don't know how we make a fetish out of it. We ask them to go die for our country. We don't pay them very well.
Then will you join me, Craig Shirley, in calling for an end to all outsourcing of military functions, so that no longer do we have people at Blackwater or at Halliburton making $100,000 a year cooking for the troops when it used to be troops cooking for the troops, and now the troops have to protect those people?
You'd be surprised, but I would like to see a huge rollback of government outsourcing, of government contracting. But that's not just with the Pentagon. That's all across the government. I think that there's too much unaccountability as far as the money goes and as far as what these people are doing. Look at all the people who have national security clearances. You saw that Washington Post
a couple weeks
expose a couple weeks ago. Well, we have 1 million people in this country who have a national security clearance.
Craig Shirley,
top secret.
CraigShirley.com. I think that of Shirley and Bannister Public Relations. I think we have finally found something we agree on.
Excellent.
Is the earth going to shake? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I'm brushing the snow from my shoulders right now, and it's 95 degrees out.
Okay, Craig Shirley, CraigShirley.com. Thanks, Craig.
You bet, Tom.
Good talking with you. For more on this and other topics, please visit ThomHartmann.com.